Welcome to Life Stories, where sometimes the cruelest birthday gift isn't what's inside the envelope, but the silence that comes with it. Imagine turning 18, expecting nothing and still being disappointed. No cake, no card, just a one-way ticket out of your own home, handed to you like a receipt they've been waiting years to cash in. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about erasure, survival, and the quiet kind of strength that grows in the shadows of people who never saw you. But what happens when the girl they pushed away comes back? Not to ask for love, but to show them what they lost. And what if the closure she thought she needed isn't the one she ends up finding? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear is not just about leaving home. It's about finally coming home to yourself. Let's begin. Madison knew something was wrong the moment her mother called her by her full name. Madison Grace Holloway, Denise said, standing in the foyer like a warden handing down a sentence. No birthday wishes, no smile, just that look. Tight-lipped, arms folded, eyes hard and gleaming like glass. Behind her, Chase was already halfway down the driveway, slipping into the driver's seat of his second brand-new BMW. He revved the engine twice, just loud enough to interrupt whatever Denise was about to say. Madison didn't flinch. She simply looked at the envelope in her hand. It was light, but it might as well have been a brick. Every instinct told her not to open it, as if knowing the truth would somehow make it harder to survive the rest of the day. She was turning 18, legally an adult, theoretically free. But in that house, birthdays weren't milestones. They were transitions, reasons to be erased. I've booked you a seat on the 10:05 to Austin, Denise said. You'll be out by morning. There was no explanation, no apology, just logistics. Madison blinked slowly, like maybe if she didn't react, the moment wouldn't exist. Why Austin? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Her mother smirked. Because it's far enough to start over, but close enough that we won't have to lie about where you went. That was the thing with Denise, brutal honesty masquerading as maternal duty. She believed withholding affection built character. That withholding love was a form of love. The envelope contained a one-way bus ticket. No return, no card, just an address scribbled on the back of a dry cleaning receipt. Some cheap apartment she'd apparently rented for 1 month. Prepaid. Chase leaned against his car now, arms folded, watching. At least you got something, he called. His voice, cocky and careless, hit Madison harder than the ticket ever could. She didn't reply. What was there to say? That she'd spent the past year saving money from online gigs? That she'd applied to community colleges in secret, hoping to escape anyway? That she'd overheard Denise once tell a friend, Madison's just not built for this family? No. Madison just nodded. Thanks, she said. Her voice didn't break. That was her win. Denise raised her brows. You should be grateful. Grateful. That word clung to Madison's chest like smoke after a fire. Was she supposed to be grateful for being discarded like some gently used piece of furniture no one had space for? Upstairs, her childhood bedroom looked untouched, but it felt like a museum. The bedding was still the same pale blue, the posters still hanging, but everything smelled stale. Forgotten. She sat on the edge of the bed, ticket in her hand, and waited for the panic to come, but it didn't. Instead, a single thought surfaced. They never really knew me, and they never wanted to. She didn't sleep that night. She packed the essentials, clothes, sketchbook, the leather-bound journal she kept hidden behind the loose panel in her closet. At dawn, she watched sunlight spill through the blinds, golden stripes across a life that was no longer hers. Denise was in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. Bus leaves at 10, she said, without looking up. I know. No goodbye, no hug, no second glance. And yet, as Madison stepped onto that Greyhound, alone, exhausted, terrified, she didn't feel broken. She felt hollow. But that hollow space, it was waiting to be filled. Austin was noisy, messy, and brutally honest, and Madison felt oddly at home. She found a room above a coffee shop owned by an older woman named Ruth, who didn't ask too many questions when Madison paid for 2 weeks up front. She kept her head down and worked. Album covers, logos, Social media ads. Nothing glamorous, but it was hers. Then came the email. Subject line, Re Your Work. Elise Jordan. Elise had once hired her for a simple branding project. She was a well-known tech founder in Austin, sharp, confident, intimidating as hell. But she had liked Madison's work, and now apparently she wanted to meet. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., wear confidence. Madison didn't know what to expect, but what she got was something Denise had never offered. Acknowledgement. Within a week, Elise had given her a part-time role on her startup's branding team. She even sent a driver to pick Madison up for meetings. It was too good, too fast. Madison was waiting for the moment it would all fall apart. But it didn't. Instead, her phone buzzed one Thursday night with a message that made her heart twist into knots. From Chase. Dinner Saturday. Everyone's home. Mom said to invite you. No, how are you? No, we miss you. Just Mom said. Madison stared at the screen. A part of her wanted to delete the message. Another part wanted to go just to see if they'd flinch. But the biggest part, the one that had gone silent for years, wanted to show them. Not out of spite, but to hold a mirror up to what they threw away. She texted Elise, "Do you think your driver could help me make an impression Saturday night?" Elise replied in seconds. "A limo or a statement piece?" Madison smiled. "Both." At a boutique tucked between a florist and a used bookstore, she met Alma, an older woman with a quiet warmth who asked no questions but somehow understood everything. "I need something for a family dinner," Madison said. Alma didn't flinch. "You want them to feel what they lost." They chose a black, backless jumpsuit, elegant and bold. No glitter, no label, just power. Saturday arrived like a storm you sense before the clouds form. As Madison slid into the dark gray town car, Ruth peeked out from the bakery window and gave a soft wave. Madison nodded, whispering to herself, "You're not going to beg. You're going to remind them." As the car pulled into her old neighborhood, the houses looked smaller, the hedges too perfectly trimmed. Chase's BMW still gleamed in the driveway, untouched by time. She told the driver to wait, checked her reflection. Lips in a deep red curve, eyes sharp, steady breath. Then she stepped out, and they were all there. Denise at the doorway, arms folded, Chase halfway through a joke that died on his tongue. Mark, her father, just inside, holding a wine glass like it might shield him from emotion. Silence. "You came in a limo?" Denise asked, tone brittle. "Where'd you get the money for that?" Madison smiled. Not cruel, not smug, just free. "I didn't come to impress you," she said, voice calm. "I came to show you what you let go." And for the first time, Chase didn't laugh. Denise didn't smirk. Mark didn't hide behind his silence. She walked toward the door, heels clicking on the driveway like punctuation, but something stopped her. A voice, from behind. Small, fragile. "Wait," Denise said, and her mother's voice cracked, just slightly, not with remorse, not yet, but with something Madison had never heard from her before. Uncertainty. "What would you do if the people who discarded you finally looked afraid of losing you? Have you ever had to walk away, not to get revenge, but to protect your peace?" What Madison does next will change everything, not just for her, but for the family who never thought she'd come back with her head held high. Read on to discover what waits inside the house she no longer calls home. Madison stood in the doorway, framed by soft porch light and tension so thick it could choke. Denise's voice had cracked, only slightly, but it was enough to pause her step, enough to make time bend. It wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was something. Still, Madison didn't respond. Not right away. She just looked at her mother. Really looked. The woman who once told her that needing reassurance was weakness. The woman who didn't come to her 8th grade art show because Chase had football practice. And now here she was, saying, "Wait." Denise cleared her throat, folding her arms tighter across her chest as if trying to hold herself together. "Are you coming in or not?" Madison took one step forward. Not for them, but for herself. The house smelled the same. Lemongrass and something synthetic, like a candle that had burned too long. The walls were still lined with family portraits, all perfectly posed. Chase's trophies glinted on the hallway shelf. There were no photos of Madison after age 12. The dining room was set like something out of a magazine, napkins folded, wine glasses sparkling, a roast at the center of the table that definitely hadn't been made by Denise. Store-bought, probably, like always. Mark sat at the head of the table, sipping quietly, eyes darting toward Madison, then away. Chase slouched into a chair, scrolling his phone with one hand and swirling wine with the other like some underage sommelier. Madison walked to her place. There was one set for her, after all, and sat down without a word. For a moment it was quiet, too quiet. "So," Denise said, voice taut, "you look different." Madison raised a brow. "Confident?" Chase chuckled, low and dry. "Cocky, more like. Successful," she added softly. That shut him up. Mark cleared his throat, setting his wineglass down too carefully. "You've been busy. Your mother says you're working with some tech company now?" "Elise Jordan's startup," Madison replied. "Branding lead." Denise's fork clinked against her plate. "You're still doing those little drawings, then?" Madison's chest tightened. Little drawings. God, they still didn't get it. "No," she said, voice calm but firmer. "I build identities, visual systems. I work with real people who actually want to be seen." That landed like a slap across the table. Chase looked up. "You think we didn't want to see you?" "No," she said simply. "I know you didn't." Silence again, and this time it burned. Madison reached into her bag and pulled something out, a small, framed object. She placed it on the table in front of her, the original one-way bus ticket. "What's that supposed to mean?" Denise asked, voice like a blade. "It's my beginning," Madison said. "The day you decided I wasn't worth staying for." Mark looked like he might say something, but didn't, and then Chase said it. "Is that why you're really here? To throw it in our faces? You think we're just villains in your little trauma story?" Madison looked at him, really looked, and something shifted. Not anger, pity. "I'm here because for years, I thought this house was the only version of home I'd ever have," she said. "And I needed to see it one last time, not to punish you, but to prove to myself that I survived it." A muscle in Denise's jaw twitched. "We gave you everything we could." "No," Madison said, voice trembling now, not with fear but with truth trying to break free. "You gave me silence. You gave me absence. You gave me lessons in how to disappear." And then Mark did something unexpected. He stood. "I told her not to do it." Everyone froze. "What?" Madison asked. "The bus ticket," he said. "I told her it wasn't right, that you weren't ready, but I let her do it anyway." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "I let a lot of things happen." Madison stared at him, the world tilting slightly. It wasn't a full confession, but it was the first time he'd ever admitted being complicit. "I'm sorry," he added quietly. Denise stood up so fast her chair screeched. "Don't apologize for me." "You don't have to," Madison said. "You've never said sorry before. Why start now?" Denise's face flushed. "I did what I had to do, raising 2 kids on one income, while your father hid behind his job and your brother." "Didn't ask for anything he didn't get," Madison finished. Chase frowned. "That's not fair." "It's not." Madison snapped, her voice suddenly sharper. "You had 2 cars before you turned 20. I had a bus ticket. You got celebrations. I got silence. You got to be loud. I had to be invisible just to keep the peace." The room fell into a stunned hush, and then came the real twist. Denise stepped forward and dropped a small envelope on the table. "I had Ruth's address," she said. Madison blinked. "What?" "I asked someone to check on you. Quietly. Just in case. I knew where you were." The breath left Madison's lungs. "You knew?" she whispered. Denise crossed her arms, as if the gesture could block guilt. "I didn't want you to think I was coddling you. You were doing well. I didn't want to interrupt that." "But you also didn't want to reach out," Madison said, hollow. "You didn't want to admit you were wrong." The envelope sat between them, thin and unopened. Madison didn't touch it. She stood slowly, slipping the bus ticket back into her bag. "I came for closure, not breadcrumbs." Mark looked down at his plate. Chase looked like he might finally say something human, but didn't. And Denise? Denise just stared at her daughter like she was seeing her for the first time. But it was too late. Madison turned toward the door, her heels soft against the floor this time. No rush, no drama. But as she stepped into the night, her heart pounded. Not from sadness, but clarity. Because sometimes the people who throw you away still try to keep a hand in your life. Not to love you, but to own the narrative. Madison wouldn't let them. She closed the door behind her. Gently, finally. Have you ever received a breadcrumb apology, one that felt more like control than healing? Madison may have left the house behind, but what she's about to discover next will test everything she thought she'd already healed. Stay with us for the next chapter of her story. The air outside felt different now, cooler, cleaner. Madison walked down the familiar steps of her childhood home with her shoulders squared, but her chest tight. There was no satisfaction in slamming the door, no triumphant music playing in her mind. Just silence. Not the kind she grew up with, the empty, heavy silence of being ignored. This was something else. This silence felt earned, peaceful even. The driver was waiting patiently at the curb, the same calm expression on his face. He opened the car door without a word, but Madison didn't climb in right away. She stood by the curb, staring back at the house she once thought she'd die in, not physically, but in every way that counted. There were no faces at the window, no one rushing out to stop her, and somehow that hurt more than she expected. Inside, she had just walked away from every unanswered question, every moment that could have led to healing, but didn't. She had hoped for some part of her mother to soften, to see the little girl she used to be. But Denise stayed true to form, even when the cracks finally showed. And her father's apology, late, incomplete, too quiet, wasn't enough to undo the silence of a lifetime. Madison sighed and got into the car. Back to the loft? The driver asked gently. She nodded. Yeah. As the car pulled away, her eyes caught something in the passenger side mirror. Her mother had stepped outside. Just barely. She stood by the doorway, arms crossed, but this time they didn't look like armor. They looked like regret. But she didn't wave. She didn't call out. And Madison didn't either. Maybe that was the ending they were meant to have. Back in the city, Madison returned to her small loft. The place was dimly lit, quiet, and still carried the scent of coffee and lavender from the oil diffuser she always left on. She hung her coat, kicked off her heels, and stared at the framed bus ticket by the front door. For a long time, she just stood there. She didn't cry, but she felt something inside her finally release. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but space. A breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding since the day she left. She poured a glass of water and sat on the floor, legs folded, eyes unfocused. It would have been easier if she hated them. If she could tuck everything into a neat little narrative. They were the villains, she was the survivor. But life never worked like that. Her family wasn't evil. They were just incapable of listening, of nurturing, of loving her the way she needed. And yet, part of her still loved them. That was the curse of it. The complicated grief of surviving something you can't quite name. She missed people who never really knew her. She longed for a version of her mother who maybe never existed. She had chased love through silence, shaped herself to be acceptable, and when that failed, she walked. But walking away didn't erase the wound. It just taught her how to stop bleeding for them. Days passed. Elise noticed her quietness at work, but didn't push. She had the kind of intuition that came from living too many lives in one. She simply passed Madison a note during a meeting one afternoon. Let it burn. But make something from the ash. Madison tucked the note into her sketchbook. That night, she opened a fresh page. Not to design logos, not to brainstorm campaigns, but to tell the story. She drew the front steps of her house, the limo parked at the curb, herself standing in that doorway in the jumpsuit Alma helped her pick out, but instead of facing the house, she drew herself turning away. Next page, her mother, standing at the window, a single hand on the glass, not reaching out, just watching. And page after that, the bus ticket, crumpled, then flattened, then framed. She didn't stop drawing until the sun came up. What started as therapy turned into something bigger. She posted the first sketches online anonymously, not expecting much, but they spread. Comments flooded in. People saw themselves in her story, the invisible daughter, the forgotten child, the underestimated soul. A few weeks later, Elise handed her a folder. Inside was an offer, a full-time role as creative director of a new campaign. Something personal, something real. I want you to tell the story, Elise said. Your way. And she did. They called it The Ones Who Walked Away. It was a series of illustrated vignettes, no names, no faces, just raw, quiet emotion. The kind that lived in the spaces between words, the kind that told the truth without shouting. It went viral. Readers reached out from all over, New York, Berlin, Sao Paulo, Cape Town, people who had left homes that never felt like home, people who found power in being forgotten. And then one day, an email appeared in her inbox. From Denise Holloway, subject, just read your work. I don't know if this is really you, but if it is, I wanted to say, I see it now. I see you. I don't expect anything. I just needed to say it. Madison stared at the message. She didn't cry. She didn't reply. She simply whispered, too late. And yet for the first time, it didn't sting. It just floated. Because she didn't need her mother's apology anymore. She had found her voice, and the world had heard it. She had become her own beginning. And maybe, just maybe, that was the twist all along. That being thrown away had given her space to rise. That sometimes survival isn't about getting them to come back. It's about learning how to never need them to. That night, as she stood by the window of her loft, watching the city breathe below, she whispered to herself the words she once needed to hear from someone else. You were always enough. And finally, she believed it. What part of Madison's journey resonated with you the most? If this story touched your heart, comment 100 below. Where in the world are you watching from? Share this story with a friend who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching Life Stories.